Bob Ludeman is somebody who lives in my neighborhood. He's an executive recruiter, and he has a really good pulse on what's going on in the market as we transition from face-to-face and belly-to-belly meetings to more of a digital approach, which is going to be interesting for a lot of us as this rapidly changes. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation to talk about the tech industry and then the real estate and mortgage industry as well. So thanks, man. Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Bob, we met. I was selling a bike. I lived in our neighborhood for 3.5 years, and the first time I met you is I didn't know anything about you. And then what it turned out is you wanted to buy my bike, and then we knew all the same people.
Yeah.
So we connected that way.
Well, it's funny. I heard your name multiple times. You know, I have a friend. We have a mutual friend, Tom.
Yeah.
And Tom was saying, "Hey, you got to meet Bundy. You got to meet Bundy." And he's into moto. And so Tom and I were riding. We did some mountain biking together, and I was talking about getting a new dirt bike. But then I looked on Facebook Marketplace, and there was a gravel bike that I wanted, and you were selling. So. Yeah. That's how we met, and you were kind of like, "Oh, you know Tom," so cool stuff. But the ironic part is I have like 7 bikes in my garage, and my wife was looking at me like, "Well, you got another bike? That's interesting."
Yeah. So I was going the other direction. I was accumulated over COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm like sitting there, and I got 2 little kids, and I'm like,
sure,
I don't have time for all this. So I got my mountain bike.
Yeah.
And then I had to get rid of 2 different bikes.
Right.
I had a cargo electric bike, and then that bike. So have you ridden that bike?
Oh yeah, and it's
a nice bike.
The reason why I was super interested in that, one is one of my friends has one, and he raves about it. But I was in Bentonville, and I ended up visiting their factory. And my background was in the bicycle industry, so it was fascinating to go to a small boutique carbon fiber bike manufacturer.
Yeah,
and they're actually backed by the Walmart family. You know, the sons are super into cycling, and they built like this amazing bike.
Pennsylvania, right?
No, Bentonville, Arkansas.
That's right, Arkansas. So, by Little Rock or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I went there probably 2001 on a sales call to visit Walmart. Was really underwhelmed with the town. Wanted to get in and out of there. But you go there today, and it's like this cycling mecca. It's a lot like Bend.
Interesting.
They've built like a super cool trail infrastructure. They've got cool coffee shops, great restaurants. And clearly there's the corporate traveler that comes in there to sell Walmart, but there's also the destination cycling tourists. And there's a lot of people that now move there because it's a cool place to live and it's relatively affordable.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
Do you think that company, was that they kind of built that culture? Or was the culture there before? Because I that's my second bike for the past 7 years I've been dealing with them, and I love them.
Yeah. So I think what happened was Walmart realized that, or the Walton sons, I don't know their names firsthand, but they were cyclists. They realized that building a community around a corporation to be able to attract workers was a real important hook, to attract better people from places like the Bay Area or LA or places like Seattle, right? So as they started to build their team and get better employees that were, perhaps had better experience, more sophisticated, what have you, they needed to have a community that sort of supported that lifestyle that people were coming from. And then they had an affordability edge. They still do, really. Yeah. So it's world class. I mean, they have theater, they have arts, they have a great concert amphitheater, some really cool stuff. And the trail network is, it's world class. I mean, I was blown away. We had a really good time there.
I've been to Arkansas many times. I don't think of it that way.
No, I don't either. Yeah,
but that's really cool. So yeah, that company. I've just been super impressed with them. I just didn't have the time to ride the bike. But you're also into moto. We'll get to the business stuff, but I want a background because you're an ex-cyclist, which cycling's super hard. Like I am I'm like at endurance sports, even though I love doing them, I'm not gifted in that part. Right. But like cycling, tell me a quick background on your cycling.
Well, I was, growing up, I grew up in Tacoma. We're both from Western Washington, and I was growing up during a time when BMX was booming, and I tried everything. I did every team sport and everything, but just riding bikes just kind of stuck for me. So got into competitive BMX racing at a young age, followed that through until I was probably a senior in high school and started to get interested in other things, and then started to focus on going to college. But it stuck with me, the passion for 2 wheels, and I got pretty good at it, on a local level, and was never sponsored by a big team or anything, but was sponsored by local bike shops, got free parts, was able to go to a lot of races. And then when I got into college, mountain bikes just started coming out. And I was like, well, I got to get one of those. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but like they didn't have the shocks. They were like...
Right. So there's a couple, we could go on for hours about how I ruined a lot of the early equipment, but got into mountain biking. And then I was studying, I changed my degree a couple times in college, but then I studied marketing and wanted to go to work for a bicycle company in marketing because I was like, wow, I could do this. And ended up applying for a lot of different West Coast companies, ended up getting a job in Seattle or Kent, Washington, Raleigh Bicycles.
Okay. Are they local in Kent?
They were, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, they've changed hands a few times, so they're still kind of in Tukwila actually now. So they ended up working there. Long story short, I thought I'd worked there for a couple of years. I ended up working there for 11 years. Kind of worked my way up through product development and marketing. But then was racing, the whole time. So, getting
mountain
back
biking?
to mountain biking. And then I got into a little bit of road cycling as well. But, physically, I'm better suited for endurance athletics. I'm a little bit leaner. You're a bigger guy. A little bit harder for you to push the bike up the hill. Yeah. So, but I was just in it for a long time. So I've got 30 plus years of racing, under my belt. So I getting back on a bike is super easy for me. So. Yeah. But I just enjoyed it, all things two wheels. We'll get to the moto piece of it, but that translates super well. Yeah. And I just think the people that I've met through cycling, what's interesting is I've heard people say cycling's the new golf. You've heard, like a lot of successful people are cyclists. It's a great way to stay fit. It's a great way to socialize with people. You can actually go out on rides and have good conversations. When I was one of my closest peers, he's a president of this company, actually, Mir, make these water bottles and coffee tumblers. But he and I would we'd call it an offsite meeting, and we'd literally go out and ride for 3 or 4 hours and just talk shop. And we'd process things and work through things.
Like the new golf, like right. You have 5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And so we would go out and we'd go on these big rides. We'd work through kind of issues. We'd sort of tumble them through and iterate and things like that. So it was a good way to do that, but it was also a great way to sort of de-stress. And I think for me, I've been at my best, business performance when I've had that balance of being able to have that, good workout time, good me time. The cycling gave me both. It gave me some me time, some quiet time, some time to think, and also just some time to just get that exercise that you really need to kind of recharge your body and be at your best when you're at your desk or performing your job. Yeah.
It's funny because I was going to do like something on running because I used to do like ultra running, even though I'm not like talented at it. It just like push you so hard mentally. But when in doing endurance, when you're by yourself, you process so much.
Yes.
You get like the stuff out.
Yeah.
And then the creativity starts. Like literally, it's almost like I need my phone with me to write down the ideas because it's literally like creativity just firing. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of these endurance sports.
And I think endurance sports, somebody asked me one time, they said, hey, you're a mountain bike racer, you're doing 100-mile mountain bike races, that's taking you 9 hours kind of thing. Like, how do you think that translates into your professional life? And I said, well, for me, it's about, it's not quitting, right? You have to get through that. It's grueling. There's times when you are suffering so bad that you just are like, I'm done, I'm out. But for me, just having that mental fortitude to be able to push through, even when you're suffering, you're cramping, it's 95 degrees, you're sweating, you want to drink pour a whole bottle of water on your head kind of thing. You just have to keep pushing and grinding. Yeah. And I think there's a definite parallel to cycling in that regard to business world.
Yeah.
Just being tough.
Yeah. So no, that's totally, and that's what I look back on. Like whenever like, oh, this is hard. Like in our industry, a lot of this audience is real estate people.
Right.
We're going through a long period of hard. Usually they're shorter.
Sure.
So it's like now we're to the point where it's like you're in the Ironman, 100 degrees, and you feel like you can't go forward, or those ultra races or the cycling where you're just like, what am I doing out here?
Right.
And it's like you just have to literally focus on each pedal.
Yeah.
I remember one race, it was 106 degrees in Coeur d'Alene, and I'm not a good cyclist, and the Ironman is 106 degrees, and I'm like, I feel like I'm going to die, but
Right.
I literally had to focus on
Yeah,
that one rotation,
100%.
you know?
Yeah, and I've cramped. I used to cramp a lot, and I finally figured out my fueling, my electrolytes and stuff, and started to do better job stretching and strength training
Yeah.
off the bike. But there's times when you're cramping and you just have to push through it, and
Really?
you're pedaling squares, and I just
Can
learned,
you
yeah,
push through cramps?
I just learned to keep going, and eventually they kind of go away. It's brutal for about 10 minutes, but then
You're just,
yeah, it's tough.
yeah.
So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, so I think I've always talked to people that endurance sports and like business,
Right.
like you should do something, whether it's,
Sure.
For me, I can only do a couple things with little kids. So
Right.
I'll do mountain biking like once a week, right? But nothing crazy,
Right.
but I push myself hard. But that mine is jujitsu now. I used to be ultra running,
Yeah.
but it's just too time consuming
Yeah.
with kids. But it's that enduring pain
Yeah.
for long periods
sure.
of time.
For sure.
So it's been a game changer, and I just highly suggest that for like anybody who's
Yeah.
trying to grow in life in general.
I think it builds mental. I mean, those types of sports, I think, build mental sharpness that I think translates really well in the business world.
Yeah.
I think it builds some structure, it builds some personal accountability, and the kind of things that you need to, I think, persevere and push through those difficult moments. And
Yeah.
I think it just helps you in many ways beyond kind of what you see on paper.
I agree.
For sure.
So this leads into when to know when to stop.
Right.
Let's talk about moto.
Yeah.
Right. So we met and we've been riding this winter.
Yep.
And Bob is a great rider for, how old are you? You're like 57.
58.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who's this guy? Like you're like a legit rider. And so you and Tom go out and go to a race. I was supposed to go with you. I couldn't make it. And you end up crashing because you
Right.
push yourself too hard.
Yeah.
Probably, right? Something happened, but
Yeah.
you like to go fast. And then it's like, we've been talking about like, the risk and reward of moto is kind of sketchy.
Right.
Right.
It is.
And now, I just think that sometimes we got to realize when, I went to the doctor yesterday for an injury that just won't heal because I'm too stubborn to do the things. I'm like, I'm good. Right.
Yeah.
But we're getting older. And so I'm kind of borderline on that moto too.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, it's interesting. When your family looks at you and gets worried about what the heck you're doing, I think you have to sort of check your ego and realize. I mean, I really enjoyed the time riding. I mean, I had a little bit of a stint racing motocross back in 2014, 2015, which really kind of checked that box and scratched the itch for me. But every time I got in my van after a race, I was literally like, okay, I survived. And honestly, then I was competing in this series and it was really competitive and it was the age group stuff. It wasn't like, but and I wanted to do well in the series, and I ended up missing a jump and kind of fracturing my tibial plateau in my knee. And then really kind of, if I wasn't wearing knee braces, I would have had surgery and all that kind of stuff. But kind of limped through that injury through the end of the season. And then right away, I sold the bike. I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
But then, get to know you guys and Tom, and it was like, oh, let's get a bike. Everybody's got a bike. And I'm kind of had the itch again. So I bought one. And no, I had a good time. And we had some excellent times riding, and I really enjoy it. And I realized like it's scratched. There's an adrenaline itch that it scratches. But I just bad luck, bad timing. It can happen at any moment on a motorcycle. And that's the thing I realized in that.
It's literally like split second stuff.
Yeah, and if I would have just had a wrist injury or a soft tissue injury or something, but when you hit your head that hard, and I'm still dealing with residual neck pain and things like that, which is impacting my sleep, it's impacting other things that I can do right now. Going through physical therapy, and they're asking me, hey, do you have any brain fog? And I said, I don't think so, but good question. So but that's the kind of thing that gives you a bit of a wake-up call, I think. So anyway, plenty of things to do.
Yeah, it's the risk and reward thing is that's why I look at my bike and I'm just kind of like, well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But cool. So executive recruiter in the tech industry, right?
Actually, no. I work in the consumer goods space.
Okay, cool.
So
explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so I work for companies that really they manufacture or they design, manufacture, and distribute a physical product. So anything that you're going to find in any main retail store. I don't do anything with grocery, food and beverage. That's not really my jam. But if you go into like a Target, for example. Many of those products are sourced by different brands. Target has their own sourcing company, their own designers, but they have a lot of vendors that will come in and develop private label products for them as well. anything that you see on Amazon, for example, anything you're going to see on your social media feeds that might be served to you via advertising.
So all those things that I click on and start buying.
Those are all consumer products.
Yeah.
So anything you're going to, a motorcycle consumer product, bicycle industries consumer products. So those kind of things. I tend to work in home goods stuff. So I spent, after the bicycle industry, I had a 15-year career in what's called the housewares industry, and it's anything that you would use for food prep in your kitchen, right? So pots and pans, knife sets, tools and gadgets, things like that. We worked with clients or retailers like Williams-Sonoma, Crate and Barrel, Sur La Table up in Seattle, Costco, Amazon, things like that. So, what we do is we work with their leadership teams or sometimes their private equity sponsors to help them build out organizational design as well as key leadership positions. So, technically it's executive search. We tend to work on director level and above, so sort of director level, vice president, C-level positions. And one of the things from my background, I worked for a private equity-backed company. I held a product development title, VP of sales title, worked a lot on strategy, and I was also a CEO. And I've worked for a few different private equity-backed entities. So I've held a lot of the roles that I end up working, recruiting for. Sort of like, you have a baseball background, you're going to go be a baseball coach. If I was going to be a baseball coach, nobody would look at me very seriously. So as a recruiter, I'm kind of like, it gives me an advantage. I understand. I get a lot of feedback from people that says, hey, you really get this. You understand, what I'm doing. You understand our business. And candidates really appreciate it because I'm kind of walking in their shoes with them through the process.
Okay, interesting.
So that's helpful. But we're seeing, we're definitely seeing a shift in the business. And I think, we want to talk a little bit more in detail about that. But, recruiting is, people need recruiters. I mean, what's interesting is if you think about an iceberg, what you see as an iceberg, you see about this much of applicant. If somebody's going to apply for a job, if you want to hire somebody, you say, I'm going to post a job and I'm going to see what I get. You're going to get people that are applicants that are coming in at the very top of that iceberg. And there are people that see your ad, they're motivated to maybe apply, but then the rest of it, people that are passive candidates, people that aren't even thinking about a new job, they might not know they want a new job until we reach out to them. We call them, we email them, we text them, we figure out how to, it's blue collar work basically in a lot of ways. So we have to grind to make connections with people, and then we surface those candidates that are typically currently happily employed, but they're curious about what's out there, but they're not actively pursuing jobs. So that's really kind of how our business works. And it's getting disrupted by technology. It's getting easier for companies to set up their own internal teams.
Outsourcing to the Philippines and stuff like that through digital.
A little bit of that, I don't think too much of those. I'm not too threatened by those. I think in tech we're seeing a bit more of that. But the issue is that it's a human to human business. I mean, it's a very and I use the metaphor, it's a face-to-face business, but you have to be on the phone talking with people. You can't just send an AI-generated email and expect to get a good result out of it. So that's the part of our service that is really tangible and meaningful for clients. And then we have to, we don't just sit there and ask them 5 screening questions. We're spending a couple hours with somebody before we're going to present them as a bona fide fit for what they're trying to achieve in that role. So, but when I say disrupting, some of these companies, they can get the exact same technology that I'm buying, and I'm using. So we're all fishing from the same pond, okay? We're using very similar tools, but what differentiates you as a top performer is your ability, we talked a little bit about that, perseverance through, the athletic endeavors, we accomplish. So you have to be disciplined, focused, you have to be driven, you have to build a process, and you have to establish relationships of trust with people. If you can't build trust with somebody, they're not going to want to work with you. So if your emails or your outreach comes off as disingenuous, or you're just trying to do a deal, you don't have that connection. You don't really have their best interest aligned with, or my interests might be misaligned if I come across as disingenuous with a candidate. If the candidate doesn't trust me, might not want to work with me, might not want to work with the client, et cetera. So I'm a real big believer in having your own voice and your own way of doing things. I mean, you get trained, people tell you how to do these types of things. There's professionals that can mentor you in things. But if you don't have your own voice and you can pick your own lane, you're going to have trouble, I think, in any kind of sales job, personally.
For sure. It's interesting, the transition, because, it's like we got text messages, and it's like I get bombarded with text messages now, and they're from overseas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm this person, and
Right.
we're a recruiter, and I'm like, look, I get it. Like, you're working hard and everything, and someone hires someone to do that, but it's like teeing somebody up and then calling them, right? Like, you got to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Even and the problem is it's time consuming, and people are so used to hiding behind technology. But I think that, and I want to talk more about this because our industry is rapidly changing so fast. Been doing this 21 years that people are just like, they're just getting left behind. So you got to keep up.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm just trying to keep up.
Right.
But it's, the successful people I know are picking up the phone as much as possible to build that relationship. Yeah, they might lead with technology and everything, but the people who are going to transition from, in my opinion, is that you're going to do old school sales with the AI stuff and reach out.
Yeah.
But you're not going to. But it's hard to replace the human part of it.
Right. Yeah.
So what's your thoughts?
No, I totally agree. I think digital outreach is really great for building awareness and just keeping top of mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So the best practices I see are people, LinkedIn's really popular in my world. Like that's a professional networking tool. So it's hugely popular. I don't work in Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or any of that, but LinkedIn's a huge tool for us. So, I'm working with an agency right now to help me a little bit on the business side of it, but I can post personal thought leadership ideas that I might opine on a move that a business has made, an acquisition that they have made, something that a new retailer invested in, or a new technology that's emerging. Shopify, for example, just announced a new partnership with Target, and that's got some interesting implications for a lot of people that I work with. So that would be a topic that I'd want to opine on and kind of give my take on that and how I think that might benefit people. So that's sort of using some subject matter expertise to sort of lean into something. But I really believe that social media is very valuable for building sort of a top-level halo awareness. You can take the one-to-many approach. You look at the number of followers you have, you look at the followers they have, the number of impressions you're going to generate, and it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And somebody said, "Oh, I only got 300, impressions on this," and it's like, well, what does a room of 300 people look like? That's a big freaking room,
Yeah.
And if you're gonna then talk to 300 people and at least get them to know who you are, I think that's really huge. And if you can get thousands, I had one post that got, I think, 17,000 impressions.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. Okay,
it's hard to think about the scalability of just. One of the things that people struggle with in our industry with social media is that, your video is out, but nobody comments and nobody likes it or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you oh, I love that video. And you talk to all these people, they see it. And then you start seeing the amount of people who watched it. And you're like, it took me not that long to film that.
Right.
And, 500 people viewed it.
Sure.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We're going to pick up the phone and call 500 people?
You can't do it.
Yeah.
And on a good day, I used to, when I was trained, they would want us to do like 30 outbound calls an hour. And if you weren't hitting that number, it was like, whoa. And I said, wait a second, I want to go quality over quantity. So back to sort of, social media's role and where the phone fits into this. We used to be in a very phone-first business. You pick up the phone, you just dial. If your numbers are down, you dial 30% more a day. You're doing 100 calls a day kind of thing. And even if you're leaving voicemails, you're making those calls and you're checking it off, okay? I always kind of said, wow, that doesn't seem right. To me, that just seems like too much. And there's recruiters that can go through those kind of metrics and actually track their performance and have some level of predictability of their success. But for me, it was more about quality over quantity. So now I'm using a combination of building the halo on top, using email campaigns. So I'm able to build a kind of a structured email campaign. Here's the first touch. It's pretty broad. And then if somebody hasn't engaged, then there's a trigger that sends a follow-up, and then we can kind of build a whole kind of email flow that kind of runs through and sort of enhances the touch.
Keeps them interested for months or something.
And if I have somebody that I've already got connection with, I pick up the phone, I'll text them, I say, hey, I've got a cool opportunity, I want to socialize with you. If not for you, for somebody else, perhaps in your network. So we're really good about kind of keeping other people activated in the equation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, using these different tools, I'm seeing AI-generated responses from candidates right now, and I see the suggestions that some of these tools are making. They will basically paste in a suggested email for me. How do you want to respond to this? And here's what we suggest. It's like, wow, I couldn't send that out. That sounds terrible.
Yeah,
It sounds
for sure.
very artificial. So for me, it's really important to create my own voice, but also then to use the tools that I have. There's some templates that I can build. And then sometimes I'll tell candidates, hey, I'm just going to shoot you this email really quick. It's a template that I have, so don't take offense to it.
You're just being transparent.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be efficient here. But I think I do see a differentiator, and I think that the companies that are going to be able to figure out how to use technology, use digital marketing, use whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's whatever business you're in, or LinkedIn for me, if you can use that in a way that sort of is building top of funnel awareness for your business, and then once you get people engaged, that sort of middle funnel, bottom of the funnel kind of stuff where you have traction with them, I think that needs to be very personalized, right?
Yeah.
And if you can figure out how to use some of the technology that we have at our disposal, some AI, to be able to write scripts quickly, so you don't sit there and obsess over it.
Or use it as a starting point.
Right, and personalize it. That's what I was going to say. So you have to use some of your words and your voice, right? But then also lean into the phone, text people. I'm using text way more than I ever have, particularly in the last 2 years. I can sit there and type it on my screen. I've got an app on my phone where I've got my business line separate from my personal line. I can text people very quickly. And then it all records that into my applicant tracking system. So like
a CRM?
A CRM, yeah.
Awesome.
So it's ATS is applicant tracking system is what we use in recruiting, but it's effectively a CRM. It tracks.
So when you're typing in here, it just goes bloop into the notes.
It logs everything right in the notes. So I can see exactly when the last time I talked with them, what was said, et cetera. And then I'm trying to think what else would be important in that regard. I'm a big believer in face-to-face interaction. So networking, Central Oregon Economic Development Council is something I rejoined recently. I dropped out during COVID because there wasn't any meetings, but that's something for me. Just understanding how that networking group works. I'm involved with industry associations, and I travel up to Seattle for a quarterly meeting for that. I go to industry trade shows. So if I can get in front of people and shake hands with people, that's for me anyways, coming from the generation and the school of thought that I have, it's way easier to do business with people, making personal interactions. And I see you smiling because I think you agree with me, So
it is the game changer.
I think that's where we people that are aligned in that thinking have a competitive advantage. And if we can then leverage the technological weapons are the wrong word, but assets or tools that we have to sort of build even a bigger presence, and then figure out the operational side of it. Because for me, all that technology is there, and I'm like, oh, this is super cool. I know how to use this a little bit, but I really need somebody to kind of run the operational parts of that to make it really hum, right? So that's probably a next hire for me to figure out if I can get more people on the phones, more people behind a desk, focusing on candidate calls, client calls, but then have a recruiting ops person focused on that sort of
managing the CRM, what we call it a CRM.
Yeah,
so
making that stuff work better.
That's exactly what we're building out, because it was just like my last coaching program was, dial more. You need more leads? Dial more. But you're like, nobody's answering the phone.
Right.
Certain people now are leaving voicemails, but so it's the same. So we just started social media. So it's like, you're reaching all these people, and then it's like, okay, then I use text message for a theme. Like, how can I help these people generate more business for them, right? My real estate partners.
Right.
And then I follow up. Like, if they respond, then it's like, okay, let's talk more about this.
Sure.
But it's these different touch points. And then leading to the face-to-face, because that's where you're really like, I think most of the people are going to rely on the technology.
Right.
And if you have that old school sales approach and using that technology, that's in the next few years, I think that's where we're going to really blow up.
I agree. Yeah, and there's different tools. There's in our business, white papers, case studies, client testimonials, these kind of things that you can use as a warm lead. And say, hey, if I'm pioneering a new client, I can send them an email and say, hey, here's some recent work that we did for XYZ client. We could do the same thing for you, kind of thing. Or we've had, I admire your business. I think you guys are doing some really cool things. I stopped by your booth and dropped off my card, but we didn't connect. I'd love to set up a call and talk. But a lot of times I need to send them some sort of proof of
who you are,
proof of who I am. Yeah. And a lot of times, my resume speaks for itself. But back to social media for a second, I think, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and there was a guru that kind of helped a lot of people in our recruiting space, because we were faced with this big time digital transition. We were very reliant on the phone. There was a lot of legacy owners that were very resistant to utilizing social media, and they were just trained on those call numbers and the metrics and how all that played out to what the actualization looked like. And there's still some truth to that, but as people work more remote, I know we kind of talked about this ahead of time, but as people work remote, you can't dial an office number anymore and get somebody. A lot of people are using their own personal cell phones.
Yep.
And some people put a firewall up, meaning they don't want you calling their personal cell phones unless you have permission to do so, right? So you have to be really careful with that, and even texting those people. And so, using social media, I think, is really interesting because people aren't picking up the phone in their office. You're relying on email, which people are now getting more and more bombarded with. And if you have their work email, in my line of work, if you're sending stuff to their work email, that's sometimes a no-fly zone because, oh, don't contact me at work. So people, but anyway, if they do email you back, then at least you can say, hey, give me your personal email and we can talk. So I try to refrain from that because we have some interesting tools that will generate personal emails for people, but sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're not. But I'd say, decent. But with LinkedIn, back to this guru, he talked about this 10-4-2 approach. So you want to connect with as many people in your sphere of influence as possible. So if I were in real estate, you want to connect with local clients or homeowners or potential homeowners, right? But in my space, I'm connecting with candidates that I think I can place that are top tier candidates. So these are people that are in director, vice president, manager type positions, C-level positions. And then I make a list of companies that I want to connect with or follow. And these are, pick 10 to 15 companies, research the key people in there, and then send connection notices there or connection invites and say something like, hey, I do a lot of work in this space. I know who your business is. Here's what we do really quick. It'd be great to stay in touch for future type of work.
And that's 10 of those?
Maybe that you get 10 companies, but then you look at the kind of decision makers in those 10 companies, okay? And the one thing they teach you in recruiting is candidates can become clients and clients can become candidates, so there's this sort of thing. Buyers can become sellers, sellers can become buyers, right? So there's some commonality there. But then once you build that network, so you keep building that and it's exponential as you build it, but then you want to go in there and you want to do 10 likes a day on LinkedIn, 4 comments, and 2 shares, okay? So the comments need to be something accretive, that's accretive to the conversation, not just like, hey, great work, Tom. Yeah. It's more of, hey, this is super interesting. You might have a couple of other sentences.
Meaningful, and that they know that you're actually not just, hey,
engaged.
Nice work.
Yeah.
Congrats.
You're just trying to make your numbers work.
Yeah. I've been there.
But it's really, but that helps the algorithm perform better, right? Because if you're engaging with the community, and if you're posting, people are engaging with your posts, et cetera. And then the 2 shares is interesting because then if you share it and say, hey, this is really interesting insights from Ryan. Ryan's a thought leader in the real estate market in Bend, Oregon. He's predicting that this is going to happen. If you have time for that, that's the world-class way to do it, really. So,
yeah, so I'm still learning all this. It was like 10 likes and comments a day.
Yep.
And then they're like, well, 10 on each platform, like Facebook, and then Instagram I chose. Right. TikTok kind of runs in the background. But I'm like, when you're wearing all the hats I wear, like I'm a loan officer, I run a team, I have to lead gen, I have to this, and I'm like scrambling to do those likes and comments, and they're not meaningful. So I think the 10-4, if I could do 4 meaningful a day, that's going to be way better than congrats. nice work.
Yeah.
Like heart.
Light bulb.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
Right.
yeah, it's better than nothing,
Right.
but I don't feel authentic, and that bothers me.
Sure.
So I've been like looking at this going, that's not my style. So thanks for telling me, because I think the four good ones.
I think you're right. It's funny because you want to be authentic, and I think that's one thing that holds us back, because I feel like I do my best work when I am authentic and I have that bandwidth. I feel like if I'm, I can hustle and make deals happen and get things over the goal line quickly. That's like you're kind of in that 2-minute drill mode, right? That works really well. But if I have to sit back and be more strategic and thoughtful, I need a little bit more quiet space. I can't have my phone pinging or my calendar pinging. I need to be more tuned in.
Time blocking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just that I understand. I just needed to tweak it, and that's funny because these podcasts are so cool, because I learned so much from it. Now I can go, okay, let's be a little bit more focused and meaningful, because I'm telling you, I'm generating business and relationships through this.
Yeah.
And it's just now really starting to, and it's only been 6 months.
Right.
And now it's like, we already closed a couple deals from people who see my stuff, and I'm like, we're just starting.
Right.
But I want to be authentic and meaningful about it.
What's one of the mentors that I had in this business, anyways, and this sounds really corny, but if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, kind of thing. You've maybe heard that before, but they talk about blocking your calendar every day, and then you also look at it on a weekly continuum. So one of the guys was doing all of his social media stuff. He would be putting posts on Sunday morning. He would unwind the headlines in the industry. So he'd call it, hey, I'm gonna basically do all my reading. I'm going to sort of jot my thoughts down. I'm either going to journal them or I'm going to type them in, and I'm going to craft, a 300 to 400 word
like a newsletter type thing
post and give it my observations. So if I was going back to my example about Target and Shopify, I would make a couple comments about that. I would opine on a couple of other things that I might have read in the news about shipping rates out of the Far East that are going to impact finished goods prices. Maybe some saber rattling about tariffs out of China, that are going to increase. What does this mean for demand? And if I was really going to be into it, those are the kind of subjects that I would put forth. And in terms of the calendar, it would be more of, okay, I've got to do recruiting calls from 8 to 10 in the morning. I need to do client development from 10 to 12. I'm going to take lunch and work out, and then in the afternoon I'm going to have other activities. But you kind of sprinkle that through. And one thing that I've found is that Mondays are the worst day. Mondays might as well be a planning day for me, because all my clients are back in. They're in their office. They're focused on their meetings. If you're trying to get in touch with them, a lot of them want to talk to me Friday afternoon when I'm kind of already cooked. And so. But I also need to realize, okay, that's one of the best days for me to reach clients. That's one of the best days for me to have calls with candidates that are working hard. It's a lot of times they're working hybrid. We talked about that before this session. What does some of the stuff mean for people that are now working remote, working hybrid? How's that impacting your business? How is it impacting my business? It's impacting my business in a way that I have people, like I said, Mondays tend to be in-office days for people, really hard for me to connect with people. So I should be doing a lot more planning on that day, doing research, building my candidate pools, building my pipeline, and then thinking about social media starting on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Fridays, I feel like people are checked out, but it feels like the power band for communicating to people on social media is those 3 days in the middle of the week. And I also think that there's better days to communicate with clients when they're more open and receptive to the buying, if you will, or making decisions. I need to get people to make decisions. I need to get people to give me feedback on things that we've done. So I think there's an art to the day part. I was on a meeting, big corporate meeting a couple weeks ago, and they're like, we're not getting a high open rate on our corporate emails. And I said, well, when are you sending them out? And it goes out at 6 o'clock in the morning every Monday. And I was like, I don't know about you, but I get a ton. Monday morning, I come into my inbox.
People are just hammering you. They're back to work.
Every single marketing agency, sets their timer to that email to pop in your inbox on that one time. I said, you guys, I get higher open rates. I look at my LinkedIn open rates. I get better open rates on Sunday mornings. Okay. And especially during football season. I can sit there and watch the NFL pregame thing. I can be on my computer. I can fire out stuff, and I'm getting live correspondence from people. If I send something on a Monday, forget about it. So, we've shifted our workflow to get better results in that regard. So.
We just changed our, few months back to our newsletter that we send out to Sunday morning. And I'm also changing, because we used to hammer the phones on Monday, right? It's like, you got to do this many calls on Monday. Now I'm like, what I did this week is I didn't do anything except plan and catch up, admin. Because what happens is if you come in and you haven't done the little things, then it never kind of gets done. So I kind of take till noon to just me time.
Yeah.
Maybe work on my newsletter, do the social media stuff, maybe, and then maybe that's when I'll do the prospecting stuff a little bit in the afternoon. And then I kind of switched to Friday and I block during the week. But I want to go back to we call them theme days.
Okay.
So my calendar is blocked from 10 to noon every day for prospecting.
Okay.
Like I don't take meetings during that time, right?
Yeah.
And then the afternoon, so that's prospecting now. You don't have to prospect all day because you burn out.
Right.
But you just do your work every day over long periods of time.
Right.
And then the afternoon is when I do all my consultations.
Got it.
Right. And if I have gaps in between, then I fill them with whatever I need to do. Maybe go into the social media side of things or whatever I need to do. But you have to time block that stuff or it ain't going to get done.
No, I think it's so important to remember. And I think for newer people in your business and my business, that is a fundamental, I think, quotient for success. If you can't do that, you're gonna really struggle.
Yeah, no, totally. It's hard with all the technology, because if you have your email up and your phone's up, and then your other monitor's up, it's like ding, ding, ding. So you have to literally shut your email off, block your calendar, and tell your team too, or your employees or whoever you work with, I need this.
Yes.
You want more business? Like, let me do this. Leave me alone. Yeah. And you have to be.
Yeah, I had an executive coach for a while when I was CEO, and that was a big theme of what he talked about. You need to inform your team. You need to let them know, hey, these are my planning times. When I have my calendar blocked, my door shut, that means I'm focused on getting certain things done. And at that level, there was a lot of things that required a ton of thought and a lot of sort of very high level precision of sort of taking data and text and merging everything together in digestible formats for board members and meetings and for investors. So that kind of that work took a lot of focus. But I think the application that you described is very prudent across almost any industry that involves sales.
In any sales, it's like if I switched industries, I'd be like, cool, I got the formula.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This is what you need to do, because we're lead generators at the end of the day, right? Like, we have to generate business or we don't get paid.
Right.
And I think people in our industry, real estate can be sexy. It's like, oh, I sell homes. Look at these pictures. It's great. I love getting people into their homes. Well, that's great. But this stuff sucks.
Right.
If you got to do it every day.
Well, it's funny. I used this analogy earlier, but it's this blue collar work for white collar pay.
It is blue collar job.
Yeah.
Right.
For white collar pay.
Yeah.
So that's the part of it.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I think is really interesting right now is that I think remote work is really changing. It's probably changing your world a lot.
Yeah.
Changing my world a lot. And we have a mix of companies that are, and it tends to be coastal. It feels like West Coast, East Coast tends to be very focused on more hybrid type work and even fully remote work. Smaller companies tend to want to do more remote type jobs because they know that they have a competitive advantage on talent. We're not going to mandate you to come back to the office. In the Midwest, most of the companies are all 5 days a week in the office.
Interesting.
And if I'm trying to recruit for somebody, I had a client in Seattle that was a outdoor products company. And outdoor products are the most lifestyle of the lifestyle businesses, right? You want as much PTO as possible. You want as much freedom as you can. It's sort of, you take a little bit of a pay cut because you sort of buy into that culture and that lifestyle, right? This company wanted people to come in 5 days a week in Kent, Washington. And Kent, you've been to Kent.
Oh, yeah.
It's an industrial park. It's not a lot going on there. There's not great places to eat and things. But it's what it was. But I mean, I can tell you how hard we worked to find people that were even willing. And what the client didn't realize was that we were unable to get them the best caliber of talent because of their policy. Okay, and it's almost like a white collar union has formed. They've really created workers, or talent has created this I guess informal union that says, no, we're not going to do this. We want hybrid. You need to trust us. You need to be able to give us the tools, empower us to do our jobs, and we will deliver for you. And in exchange for our, some of this more flexibility and freedom in our life, we will deliver for you. I left a 70-hour-a-week job as a CEO. It's something that I dreamed about. But I had some health issues, and I made an intentional decision, after going through that I wanted to move my family to Bend, and I wanted to be closer to my office. I wanted to be home for dinner at night. I didn't want to be stressed out over the weekends. I didn't want to be constantly under pressure. So I made a lifestyle choice to downshift and do this type of job. But I think about it now, I can run home at lunch right now. I'm probably going to. I can tend to a few things at home. I can make my own meal. I can also be home in 10 minutes if I need to be. I can shuttle between things. I've got all this flexibility, but I'm making as much money as I was making in that type of a high stress job, working less hours, way less stress, having my own autonomy. So that kind of thing resonates for me personally when I talk to candidates. And when I counsel clients, if they say, hey, what's your return to work policy? If they're 5 days a week, I'm probably not going to work with them. And it's because it makes the recruiting aspect of it and the ability to deliver the best talent possible very difficult.
Yeah, that makes
especially
sense.
on the coast.
Yeah, so you're just narrowing down your client, which is another thing that you have to do too. It's like you have to decide who you're going to work with,
right,
and then focus on it because we have clients. I pick up the phone and within 2 minutes I know if we're going to work together.
Right.
Now I treat them the same, but I eliminate it super fast.
Sure,
because you only have so much time in the day. But that's interesting that you're seeing that there is it makes sense that it's going to be hard to recruit for them. So it'll be interesting to see if they adjust to that.
Yeah, I think what's happening is you're seeing an adjustment in how companies manage. So I read pushback from employees that'll say on LinkedIn, for example, they want 100% remote positions. They're pushing back against the bigger tech companies that are mandating them to come back to work. And they're saying, well, it's my manager's fault if they can't manage, and the executive team just wants to see butts and seats and, to make their jobs, to sort of, what's the right word? Basically to satisfy their egos, to have everybody there, and they want to look around in the office and make sure
look what I got.
People like, and so, even coming into this co-working space, you see there's quite a few people here first thing in the morning, and everybody's working. It's kind of cool. I personally like that. I grew up in that environment. I thrive off of that. I thrive off of that community energy. I think there's certain careers that are very focused on collaboration, product development, some marketing jobs. There's other things that are behind the desk and you're behind a screen, and you don't necessarily, and a lot of those people that do those types of jobs are more introverted. Yeah. Extroverts, I think, need community and they need interaction with people. So that's why sales, marketing, any kind of creative services type job tend to be, I think, better performed. And somebody could debate me on this, and I'm sure there's good valid debate points, but better performed in a group setting, at least a few times a week. Okay,
I agree.
There are some collaborative tools that I think work, but nothing replaces face-to-face, nothing. And I think what's going on too is that companies have now adapted, and the way I counsel people when we're talking about organizational design, I said you have to develop workflow methods to match your hybrid strategies. So if someone is in the office 2 days a week and your teams are coming in, and then the other 3 days, you need to have really good project management that's managing the in-between cycles. You have your collaborative meetings on Tuesday. You kind of go through a series of 2 or 3 different meetings. You have a marketing meeting, a product meeting, whatever else meeting, traffic meeting, and then on Thursday you have a different meeting. But in between, there needs to be somebody that's managing the flow
to make sure that it's actually
everything is getting done and ready for that meeting. So when people do come into the office, they feel like the time is well spent. We're not looking over the shoulder and saying, "Oh, you didn't do your part. What's going on?" And there's tools like Asana. There's Monday.com. There's these project management tools that a lot of big companies are using now that are really effective. And you're seeing project management, kind of like we talked about operational management with CRM ops, being really a critical function to make the remote work piece of it or the hybrid work piece of it function.
It's the glue of it just to make that. And that's what I was just, if you're running a big business, and luckily we've been remote even before COVID, but you know, in these bigger, more advanced companies, I could see how that could just be like, how am I keeping it together and flowing forward with people can't walk into each other's office and have a quick conversation. But now we do have all these quick chat stuff and Zoom and Teams and all that. So it's just interesting how things have changed. And
but remote's kind of interesting because it helps us when we have a client with a more challenging budget. I've just wrapped up a search, and offer just went out this morning or I got it last night, I sent it over this morning, but you know, a client says, look, I don't need somebody from a major city. You know, can you find me somebody for a reduced price? And I said, well, it's got to be a tier 2, tier 3 market. You know, let's look down the I-5 corridor. Let's look in some of the more Midwest states or the mountain states, et cetera. And these are remote people, right? And so think about how remote work is benefiting your business. You know, you talk about Bend, Oregon. People want to move here. You know, I can be remote. I'm close to a ski area. I've got fishing. I've got golf. I've got cycling. I've got all these things in my backyard. But there's also a little bit of a risk. You know, you can have all that, but if then that job goes away somehow, you know, if you lose the job, the company has problems, unless you can find another remote job that's willing to let you work in Bend, Oregon, then you have to kind of like sell and move. But maybe that is good for business because, you know, there is sort of deal flow when it comes to real estate. But anyway, it's super interesting. I think the companies, for me, what I'm seeing, what I call centered practice, I won't call it best practice because everybody has a different vision of what best practice is. I call centered practice in today's companies, at least the companies I work for, hybrid, 2 days a week. And then they're taking some of the money that they would have invested in office space. They're now downsizing their offices, doing more sophisticated build outs where people come in, they have all the creature comforts they could want, a great work environment. But they're also then investing some of that money in offsite functions where they're bringing people in quarterly kind of thing. They're going to different venues that are exciting where, you know, you're going to go. I have a client that did a function in Sun River, for example. Yeah. They did another one in McCall, Idaho. So some cool places where you can go and kind of recharge, but also do some work.
Oh, nice. Yeah. No, the office space, that's for our industry, that translates right into interest rate.
Yeah.
I can always tell you, oh, these big companies, they're a great company. I'm like, that's great. You're paying for it.
Right.
The big office, all this fancy stuff.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But I think that's good. It's about an hour and 15 minutes.
Right at 55.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about? We went over a lot.
What do you want to talk about?
Man, that was awesome because you just flowed the whole time.
Felt like we didn't even take a breath.
I know. No, and we don't like. I mean, unless there's another topic. I mean, for me, just the fact that, you know, it feels good to hear this is that I'm going through this transition, and so are you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's scary because you're like, well, what the hell's happening? Like, is this going to work?
Yeah.
And then we're in a tough market. And we talked about, you were in a tough market for a while, and you're kind of like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
And so in our industry, it's what the hell's going on, right? But you got to adapt. And if we don't adapt, then, you know, I guess on the other end of it, if you do adapt, I always just go keep one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, keep it moving.
Yes.
But sometimes that cycling thing, it's like that demon creeps in, like, and that negative attitude can creep in. Yeah. But you have to recognize it and just be like, you still got to put one foot in front of the other.
So when we talked the other day, you said you were part of a group, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm as well. So I'm technically a franchise business. Although I don't have like franchise rules and stuff, I can set my own. But I pay a royalty, you know, and I get marketing services for this. I get training and education. But more importantly, I get a community of owner network, right? So I have these, we call them O2O meetings. So I can become I'm a member of a small group, but I also go to biweekly team meetings. You know, they'll have a Tuesday morning session. But there's a lot of continuing education. There's a lot of other things where, like, literally I could ping another owner and say, hey, you made a comment on this last call. I want to pick your brain on this. Oh, you're using this particular technology. Can you educate me on this?
So it's a community. You're not just on your own. And that's the same thing.
And that for me is amazing because I'm in a single man office suite by myself. I have a remote employee up in Wenatchee. I had a person in my office before I had a bigger office, but I've downsized that. And so having those extra people to communicate with, those peers. So I would counsel anybody doing kind of the things that we do to have a professional network that is a peer-to-peer network, non-competitive, where somebody else in a different market, where you can share ideas, you can bounce things off. Hey, what's working for you? What's not? It's super interesting to compare a different business because we talked about, we have the same issue. We got to build top of funnel, we have to build middle of funnel, and then we have to close if we want to put food on the table, right? So those fundamentals are very similar, and how we approach our customer has a lot of similarities as well. And I'm by far not the smartest guy in the room when it comes to this stuff, but I definitely am a good learner and can learn a lot from people that are better than I am in that regard.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think investing in yourself.
Yes.
And it's expensive sometimes. Like people are like, well, I can't afford coaching. I'm like, you can't afford to not do coaching.
Right.
Right. Like that's how I look at it.
Sure.
You know, and it's you know, just like Connor helps me out here, and then I got my business coaches, and it's like, look, I'm investing in myself more than I ever have in the worst market I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because I know that nobody else is, or very few people are. But it's, you know, it's scary to invest like that.
When I had a business coach, the first thing he asked me, he's a great guy. First thing he asked me was, how's your sleep? Number one question. And for me lately, I've been focusing on sleep. I've been focusing on being very intentional about the things that disrupt my sleep. You know, I'm using a Garmin watch now, I'm tracking my sleep, and I can tell you, I could go down a list, we don't have time for that, but the things that disrupt my sleep and how much better I feel when I have a full night of sleep with a couple different REM cycles, and how much that helps my performance during the day.
Yeah.
It's night and day.
Okay. We got to talk more about that
We
offline
will.
Because you know, it's like I think I got used to not sleeping with little kids.
Right.
That now I wake up, you know, in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'll go back,
Sure.
sometimes I'll kind of toss and turn, but
Yeah.
but I've almost trained myself to work off of less sleep.
Right.
It's a trip.
Yeah.
So, hey man, thanks for coming in.
Yeah. It was
Good
great.
to see you. That was awesome. Yeah. Thanks.